Welcome back. You're still watching the Daily Debate. Ambassador Medhat Meligy is with us in the studio for tonight. Thank you very much once again for being with us tonight. And we were speaking about the balance we should be striking as Egyptians, as an Egyptian diplomacy, to be balancing between the Egyptian security, national interest and the humanitarian concern, especially with a crisis such as the one that we have seen in the Gaza Strip for the past 2.5 years. How do you see this balance was struck by the Egyptian diplomacy and by His Excellency President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi despite the challenges?
Well, first of all, I don't see it, as something that could be a balance between both things. I think they both go in parallel.
Yes.
The national security of Egypt cannot be separated from the national security of its region, of the Arab world, or even of Africa. So part of our own national security is to make sure that the countries and the region around us is also as stable as we are. We've been faced with a lot of challenges simply because the unrest that we've seen, whether we're talking about our western border or eastern border or southern borders, because of the crisis in Sudan, in Palestine and in Libya as well. So this unrest causes a kind of insecurity when it comes to our own national security. And this is one challenge that is most important for all, because at the end of the day we have to be realistic. The national security of Egypt should be #1 priority when it comes to Egyptians.
Yes.
Having said this, I think that there is no real conflict between the two ideas that you proposed. As I said, they should be going in parallel. But let's first focus on something. The reference of Egypt regarding the security of the countries and the regions around us, this national security issue is part of those countries' national security. And the reference of the superpowers that are inflicting too much harm to the region is because they have a different reference. We are looking at the national security of the region as a whole, as a comprehensive solution to the current crises. But when it comes to the regional or actually the international superpowers that are leading the major picture of the region, actually they are more focused on a convenient solution, a solution that should, and we have to say it bluntly, that is prioritizing the security of Israel over the security of the neighboring countries. I mean, we are still talking until this moment about the security of Israel, while Israel is a menace and a threat to the security of all the countries around it. Look at Lebanon, look at Syria, of course Palestine, and the genocide that took place there and still did not stop. Well, it is not as powerful as it used to be during the 2 years of the war crime against the Palestinians.
2023 and 2024.
But although we are all claiming that we restore peace, there are around 500 persons who have lost their life since the signing of the agreement of Sharm el-Sheikh. So I wonder what kind of peace are we talking about if Israel doesn't want to stop. It doesn't have the same scale of the genocide that was taking place before the agreement, but still there is killing. And Israel have always the upper hand to use its might against the unarmed Palestinian people without any kind of reservation from the Western world. We are not listening to anything from the United States, not to mention, of course, as well, most of European countries, who none of them is speaking of anything except that peace have been restored.
Yes.
I don't see this happening, and actually, as you have seen, because of one body that the Palestinian couldn't locate or couldn't excavate because of the Israeli bombardment, Israel doesn't want to move to phase 2. I think that the Palestinians have shown more than goodwill by giving all the living prisoners and all the bodies of the remaining prisoners who lost their life due to the Israeli bombardment. And yet, because of one body, Israel do not want to move to phase 2, which of course we understand why, because Israel doesn't want to retreat from the lands it occupies in in Gaza Strip.
Yes.
We have once again to mention something very important, and I insist on repeating this in every show that I am invited to, that Israel insists on not declaring where its official borders are, so it can continue annexing land from neighboring country, whether we are talking about Palestine or Lebanon or Syria, because the minute it will recognize its own borders, this would mean that any land beyond these borders are foreign lands that should not be occupied. But Israel, ever since its establishment in 1948, they never wanted to declare where their borders are, because this would entail that they cannot seize any more land, which they don't want, of course, to do, because this is an expansion country and it wants to keep expanding until it cannot take any more lands, or it doesn't want to take any more lands. Unfortunately, the role of the West is not sufficient at this point, because Israel continues to do what it wants without any kind of recommendation from the West. We didn't hear anything from President Trump, of course, as he is in a big love story with Israel, not to mention his love, as he mentioned it himself, to Prime Minister Netanyahu. He even got the audacity of asking the President of Israel to remove all the charges against him in what is considered, from an Israeli point of view, flagrant actually violation to the Constitution of Israel and to the laws of Israel. But nevertheless, President Trump insists that this is one of the best leaders of Israel, according to him and according to his vision. That's why he wants him to be spared from all the accusations of corruption that were raised against him. So we are actually in a very hard situation, not to mention that the deal itself that is now have been presented to the Security Council and has been adopted as a resolution of the Security Council is a very, very unclear and vague text that actually, until this point, I mean, ask anyone from the region about what does it mean about phase 2, for instance, of this agreement, and whether we should confiscate the weapons of Hamas and all the...
Will there be any updates regarding phase 2 by the Americans in January?
Well, actually,
of the year?
If you see, I mean, it was before the end of the year that we are going to establish this stabilizing force, as they call it, and so far nothing, and we are hearing news about mid-January, maybe early February, because none of the countries wants to be part of this, because no one wants to go into a direct confrontation with the Palestinian resistance movements. But Mr. Trump himself said a couple of days ago that 59 countries are willing to participate, and I wish he would just name 3 of them to us so we know who accepted this. The only one that I might think that they might agree is Ethiopia, because there was some rumors coming from Ethiopia itself that it's considering the issue. But even the countries that previously have said that they are willing to participate, such as Indonesia, for instance, they retreat that later on, because, as I said, nobody wants to go into confrontation, that they want to do the dirty war that Israel doesn't want to go to, and actually after 2 years they couldn't actually succeed into taking and eliminating the weapons of Hamas. So they want the international community to do that on their behalf, which is, of course, an impossible step. But the most important thing that nobody really knows is this stabilizing force is going to have as one of its tasks to remove by force the weapons of Hamas and the other resistance movements, or is going just to separate between Israel and Palestine, so no more atrocities could happen against the Israeli. You will hear tons of versions of the explanation of this text, because the text in itself was meant to be, as I said, vague and unclear.
Yes, Mr. Ambassador, moving on to another important point, because you mentioned that regarding the Egyptian diplomacy and the way the Egyptian diplomacy is moving under the tenure of His Excellency President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi, is to be looking at the greater picture within, or putting within consideration, the Egyptian interest at heart. So Regarding the Libyan national security, how do you think this will be affecting us on the long term?
Well, it's a neighboring country. I mean, we just have one of the longest borders with any country, which is the one with Libya, taking all the way from the Mediterranean until the borders
maybe
with Chad.
1,200 kilometers.
Something like that.
Yes.
So I think this is very important. And whenever this country is unstable, this would mean that there could be smuggling of narcotics, smuggling of weapons, smuggling of anything illegal in Egypt at large. And this, of course, would mean that there is a destabilization in our national security, something that we would not want to see. But at the same time, what we are really concerned about is the Libyan unity. We all know that there is like a kind of separation between the government in Tripoli on one side and the parallel powers that are running Benghazi and the rest of the Libyan territories. And I think that there is also an intervenence of foreign countries in this, and as we have known throughout history, that whenever there is a foreign power inside any country, it's destabilized. You cannot claim that this is to stabilize the country unless it's coming under the United Nations system with a clear mission and a clear agenda on what these forces should be doing. Like, for instance, the UNIFIL in Lebanon, or the UNASUM in Somalia, and so on. So I think without this power given by the United Nations, any presence of a foreign influence, I will not even say forces, but just influence, will definitely destabilize Libya or any other country in that matter. And that's why President Sisi was clear when he said that all foreign countries should be moving away from Libya and let the Libyan decide themselves the future they want for their country, if they want their country to be divided or they want a unified Libya, which we are all hoping for. But we have to understand that the idea of having a foreign influence definitely would lead to chaos in Libya and will prolong the instability and the unrest there for as long as there is this foreign influence.
And finally, Mr. Ambassador, from Libya to Sudan, how do you see the Egyptian leadership viewing the situation nowadays in Sudan, and what are the efforts to be solving the situation there?
Well, first of all, the first thing that we have to look at is that Sudan is a country with people. It is not just natural resources, it's not just gold that they have, it's not just huge lands of land that could be cultivated. I mean, Sudan is much more than that. Egypt, when it's tried to help, Egypt is first of all favorizing the legitimate power that should be in reign in Sudan, that's one, and not encourage the presence of militia. And most importantly is not for any country in the world, whether from the region or outside the region, to benefit from this current crisis in Sudan. I think that many countries should be rearranging their priorities and not to benefit and getting more and more rich over the blood of Sudanese. Unfortunately, due to the last couple of years of atrocities and war crimes in Palestine, we neglected to look thoroughly into the Sudanese affairs. And the reality is that there were a lot of war crimes. There is a lot of, whether we are talking about raping against women, or mass killing, or a lot of war crimes committed in Sudan, but unfortunately because the media was not focused there, so it permitted many of the militias who were there to commit those war crimes. The idea now is to restore the unity of Sudan. Sudan should not be divided again after it was divided between northern Sudan and southern Sudan. It should not be divided again into several parts, and this is exactly what the enemies of Sudan and the enemies of the region wants to see, is more and more divided Arab countries, more and more militias, and more unrest and instability in the region.
Yes, Ambassador Medhat Meligy, thank you very much. The former Assistant Foreign Minister, thank you very much for being with us tonight on the Daily Debate.
Thank you for having me.
Anytime. And this brings us to the end of the Daily Debate for tonight. Thank you for watching, and I'll be seeing you next week.